everybody, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video we are going to do another Pretty Little Liars unpopular opinions video. You guys really enjoyed the last one, so I thought we could sit down and do another one. So if you haven't already checked out part 1, I recommend you do that because that has like my main ones, do you know what I mean? But these are kind of like my other little ones. So I don't know if these are unpopular, by the way. It could be like a really valid opinion through the fan base, but I'm not really in the fan base, so I don't really know. I never really considered Alison as one of the liars. I never really considered her a liar, you know, when we saw her through the flashbacks and things like that. And then when she came back, she was even less of a liar to me. She had no proper, I guess, like authority in the group, and it didn't feel the same within the group. I ultimately never saw her as like an actual group member of the main liars, and once she came back and it was the whole redemption arc, which I really despise, it just even more kind of pushed her out of that group and pushed her out of like kind of being like a main character in the story. So yeah, I never really considered her a liar, and to be honest, I considered Mona a liar more than I considered Alison one of the liars. Do you know what I mean? I feel like this one is going to be really unpopular, but I didn't like Toby and Spencer, and I thought there was zero chemistry. The first kind of like 2 to 3 seasons of Toby and Spencer was okay, and it was fine. It was like, yeah, cute, right? But I feel like as we progressed through the show, they treated each other really badly. Toby obviously joined the A team. Spencer would kind of bite back at him quite a lot and have quite a few outbursts towards him. And I feel like they had more downs than they had ups. And whenever they were just on screen together, I didn't really get the chemistry aspect. There's couples on the show where you get the chemistry and you can see it through the screen and you can feel it through the screen. Like Jason and Arya, I think that was a good couple. And then Caleb and Hannah, really, really good chemistry. Maya and Emily, really, really good chemistry. But I never really felt with Spencer and Toby that the chemistry was there and it was sustainable, and I never really felt it. And then after the time jump, I was really annoyed because I quite liked Yvonne and Toby. I think it was a really healthy relationship that Toby really needed, especially because he went through a lot with Jenna as well, and I think people forget that. So Yvonne was a really, really nice relationship for him to have. And when him and Spencer saw each other again after the time jump, they seemed genuinely happy for each other. And there was no kind of tension. And they seemed like they had grown up. They had gone their separate ways. But they had obviously not ended in a bad way. And they had just grown up. And they were happy for each other and where each other were. And there were multiple times in the time jump series that they established that, you know, they had moved on and things like that. And I know sometimes people just say that, but it really did feel like it. So honestly, justice for Yvonne, because I feel like she was a good character and they killed her off purely just so that Toby and Spencer could get back together, rather than a natural coming together of them two and, you know, maybe falling in love with things that they had experienced as teenagers or whatever. But I felt the chemistry with Yvonne and Toby. So when they went immediately back to Spencer and Toby, it just felt really weird, especially because Spencer and Toby got together quite quick after Yvonne died, that it felt like the writers were just like, okay, she's dead, right, let's get them back together. Do you know what I mean? Also, especially like Toby joining the A team sent Spencer into like a whole thing, and she even got admitted into Radley, and I feel like it permanently changed her for such a long time. And I think that's quite overlooked. And they got back together quite quick after that whole thing. And I understand Toby joining A team was to protect Spencer, but ultimately it did the opposite and it made her a lot worse. So yeah, I don't think I'm a fan of that relationship. Similarly, Hannah and Caleb were my favourite couple. However, after the time jump, Caleb was really annoying. I'm sorry. He was so annoying and I really didn't like him. And it's annoying to me because Caleb was like one of my favourite characters. But he was really annoying. I was like, oh my God. Like, I liked Jordan, which was Hannah's fiance after the time jump. And I felt like they could have explored something fresh there. Because I feel like Caleb as well, he went with one of Hannah's best friends. They might not be best friends still, but they were best friends for a big part of their life. So I think Caleb going and dating Spencer is just something that shouldn't really be passed on. It's a bit of a red flag to me, because if he had the intentions to do that in the first place, does that make him a good future partner? Do you know what I mean? I quite liked Jordan, and they could have carried that on further. I think after the time jump, they were quite scared to ditch the ships, because obviously there was a lot of fan bases that really liked them, and I think it would have been like, whoa, what are you doing? Yeah, I think Caleb after the time jump, Hannah and Caleb, I don't think they should have been a thing. And like, that pains me to say, guys, because Hannah and Caleb were my favourite couple on the show, but I feel like they had outgrown each other once they come back from the time jump, and they were on different kind of pathways. And I don't know, I liked Hannah's other relationship, and I think that could have got explored a bit more. I don't think this is unpopular, but it might be. Okay, my next one, I think the dollhouse should have been carried on for a lot more episodes, and I'm talking like maybe 5-6 episodes longer. Maybe not directly in the dollhouse, but I know we're shown some type of PTSD that the liars face after the dollhouse, but I feel like it's quite swept under the rug quite quickly. And I personally think Pretty Little Liars peaked with the dollhouse. I think it was the best thing that they did. It was such a good idea, and it was such a good concept. If you had watched the show, obviously from the beginning with the dolls and stuff, and it kind of links back to Mona's A and the concept of playing with dolls. We had like 2 episodes in the dollhouse, and I personally think we should have just had a lot more. I think it needed a lot more time. I think there was more to explore. I would have liked to see what really went on in the dollhouse. The whole Sarah thing, and how it even became a thing. Obviously we're told that like Noel helped Cece and Cece built it and stuff, but I wanted to see like more of it. And I don't know, I think there was more to explore with the dollhouse. So the fact we only got like 2 episodes, it was really underwhelming. It was like, well, that's like the best bit of the show. I love rewatching the dollhouse episodes. Like, I mean, not for the sake of the girls, like, sorry to the girls, but like it was cinema. It was true TV. What can I say? Like, but yeah, I would have liked to see more, even more scenes of A in the dollhouse. Like, you know, we occasionally get the scenes of A watching the girls on a screen or something. I would like to see A like setting things up or just doing things around the dollhouse to kind of get a more bigger aspect of it, if that makes any sense. Just like a more detailed thing, just because like everyone loved the dollhouse. So I think they could have, instead of 2 episodes, I think they could have done it over the period of like 5 episodes. And I think the fallout should have been a lot more as well. I would have liked to have seen, obviously we see the police go into the dollhouse at the end and find Sarah Harvey. I would have loved to see more of them seeing the dollhouse, and you know, even like Toby being the police officer that goes down into the dollhouse and sees everything fully. I think would have been really cool. And then to see like when Mona came to the dollhouse, what had gone on with Mona and things like that. I don't know, I think I think they could have just done more with the dollhouse, you know? I feel like I'm going to contradict myself a bit here. But I don't think the girls should have forgiven Alison for everything that she put them through. And I know at first, obviously, it took a while for them to kind of connect back and to let Alison join in the group, but I don't think they should have forgiven Alison so quick, because ultimately a lot of the girls' struggles came from Alison and what Alison would say about them, and it's really personal stuff too, like Emily's sexuality, Hannah's eating disorder and things like that. So I don't think the liars should have forgiven her at all. And I don't think she should have reunited with the girls at all, really. And I think she should have just stayed out of Rosewood. I don't think the girls owe her forgiveness. And I think it's okay sometimes not to forgive someone. Do you know what I mean? Especially because, like, Alison didn't just traumatize the girls, but she traumatized, like, most of the town. And I always think, like, if you had so many people who wanted Alison dead, then we need to look at the issue. The one consistent issue that everybody has on the show was to do with Alison. And Alison was a real mean girl. And yeah, it took a while for them to accept her back and whatever. I think Emily was way too easily accepting of Alison coming back so soon. I think Emily went under a lot of manipulation that doesn't really get told in terms of her sexuality. In terms of, like, Alison kind of gaslit her into speeding up kind of, you know, Emily's thought process and feelings about her sexuality. And so I think Emily went through a lot that's not really told when it comes to terms with Alison, because obviously we're told that Alison and Emily are in love and things like that. So I think Emily's kind of blinded by that and accepts her so quickly, when I don't think she has to. If she wants to, obviously, but I don't think she has to. And I think it's unrealistic that all of the liars kind of forgave her in the end. It took a while, obviously, and Hannah was very against Alison when she came back, and I really liked that, showing that they're not all just going to follow her again. But I think Rosewood and I think the liars had outgrown Alison, so yeah. But now I'm going to contradict myself, because I think they should have maybe not forgiven Mona, but heard her out a bit more. Obviously Mona was traumatized by everything that Alison had put her through, and that's ultimately why she became A. And I don't think the girls should have forgiven her for being A, and I don't think that's something that just should be done anyway. But I think because Mona helps the girls out so much, she deserves some type of leeway in terms of, like, they don't have to be rude to her and ignore her and pretend she's not there whenever they see her. At the start, obviously, once they found out she's A, 100%, like 100%. And I'm not saying they have to forgive her for being A, but I think there was a lack of them hearing her out and not hearing her, like, excuses for being A, but just hearing her life story so they could get a better understanding of where she was coming from, and she could get a better understanding of where they were coming from with their feelings as well. And I personally think if you're willing to accept Alison back into the group, and Alison is willing to let Cece out of Welby after Cece was big A, why is Mona the one anomaly within that can never be, you know, never have that arc of redemption, I guess? And I think Mona did enough to prove her way throughout the show after that she was A, that she was trying to turn a leaf and she was trying to help the liars in the way that she could. But I think there's a point where she does so much to help them and they still aren't not accepting or forgiving, but aren't just a bit more lenient, that she's like, right, I'm going to go back and join the A team then. I don't think she should have been part of the liars, and I think that's too far, and I don't think we should paint Mona out to be innocent just because she's like the best character on the show. But I think just hearing her out and hearing her story would have just helped regarding understanding the situation a bit more and things like that. Do you know what I mean? I hate the Ezra is A theory. I don't think it makes sense, and I think it makes me really uncomfortable to the point where it's not uncomfortable in like a good uncomfortable, in like a way that's like, you know, when like a writer does something that makes the audience uncomfortable, but in a good way because we didn't expect something. But Ezra being A would have made me really uncomfortable in a way that's just like, this is just more creepy than ever. And like, I think the whole relationship with Arya would have been even more creepy. And I just think I just don't think it makes sense. And even with his age and his story, and the way he just is towards the girls, I don't think it would have made sense. And it kind of would have came out from nowhere. Ezra is just on the show because he had a relationship with Alison. He has a relationship with Arya, and he's their teacher. I don't know. I hate the theory. There's some theories to me that just I don't vibe with. Like Melissa being A, I'm like, where is this coming from? Ezra being A, like even weirder. Whereas there's some A's which can make sense, like I did my Ren theory and Arya theory. I think those make sense, but like there's some people on the show that make sense and just some that just don't. And the Ezra theory is something that I've never got on with because I'm like, it doesn't really make any proper sense, really. Do you know? Not sense in terms of like plot holes, but just sense in general. Do you know what I mean? Okay, I think this is an unpopular opinion, and I just want to say I'm not shading like the actress or anything like that. I think she's amazing, but I disliked Spencer a lot of the time, and she's a lot of people's favorite liar, but honestly, like, she's not my least favorite, but like she's kind of down there on the list. I didn't really vibe with Spencer. I think we're just different people, and that's totally fine and totally normal, and you automatically gravitate towards characters that are more kind of like you, so that's probably why. But throughout the show, I felt, and I don't think this is her fault, by the way. I think this is, obviously we see she was kind of brought up like this, but she's very controlling. She's very selfish. She's quite self-centered. And when she comes up with a plan, it's her plan or it's nothing. And sometimes the liars have better plans. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And yeah, I just didn't vibe with Spencer that much, and I feel like whenever I'm looking online that it's quite an unpopular opinion because everyone loves Spencer, and I'm not shading the actress. I think Troyan is sensational, and the way she carried the show in terms of acting is like, that needs to be studied. Like, that was like crazy. I just didn't get along with Spencer, and I think she was quite undermining to a lot of characters too, especially Hannah. I think, obviously, the joke of the show is that Hannah is like the dumb one. But I think Spencer played up to that the most. I don't think Hannah was dumb. Sometimes, obviously, she said some things, don't get me wrong. But sometimes Hannah had really good plans and ideas. And I think her growth through the show was very clear, but Spencer would always shut her down, and I felt like sometimes it was just a bit unnecessary. And yeah, also I think Melissa's feelings towards Spencer are really valid, and I don't really know why the show tries to act like Melissa is in the wrong, because obviously Spencer has had a relationship with Ian and Ren, both of Melissa's boyfriends, and Melissa is obviously going to act very cruel back to her, because that's just not a thing you do as a sister, or just as a human being anyway. So it's kind of like the parents' reactions to Ezra and Arya. They painted Melissa out to be kind of a villain for acting a bit like, I hate you because like you ruined my life, because she essentially did. Like, her and Ian were getting married, her and Ren had a good thing, and Melissa and Ian were going to have a baby and things like that. And there was a lot of things that Spencer kind of took away from her. So I don't think Melissa's feelings towards her were invalid. And I think the show does a lot to invalidate Melissa and how she feels. But in reality, like, I think that's how anybody would feel, especially if it was her sister, if it was their sister. So yeah, I don't see an issue with the way Melissa was towards her, really. My next one, I think one of the liars should have died. Now, I think they should have died at the end of the show, like the very end of the show, because it would be kind of full circle with Alison's death and then one of the liars' death. I don't know who I would want it to be or the storyline regarding it, but I think it would show to the audiences that like a lot is at stake and a lot has happened, and where we were at the beginning is kind of where we were now, and it's never really changed, and it's kind of done this whole full circle thing. I think it would have been cool. I think it would have been such a good like moment in terms of like we wouldn't have expected it and things like that. So I don't know which liar, like I said, or the storyline or how or who would kill them or whatever, but I don't know, I think one of them should have died. I actually quite liked Noel in season 1, and Noel is a character I've spoken about on this channel before. I quite dislike Noel in the later seasons of the show, but I think in season 1 and season 2 I quite like him. Obviously he is still not a perfect person. I don't think anybody is, but you know, I think he genuinely cared for Arya, and he was the first person to kind of call Ezra out regarding the relationship. And yes, it was to benefit himself, but I also think there's some kind of protection in there for Arya. And I would not have been opposed to Noel and Arya being a thing. I think in the books that they're a thing, and I don't know, I quite like his character in the earlier seasons. As the show goes on, I really despise his character, especially because he gets involved in all the plot lines for like what? Do you know what I mean? But I think the earlier Noel, and if Noel and Arya would have been a thing back then, I wouldn't have hated it. Like, I don't know. Linking back to kind of one of the liars dying, I think more characters should have died, and more main characters. I think Ezra should have died when he got shot in New York. I think Toby should have died when he joined the A-team. I think Melissa should have died because she was quite an irrelevant character. Sorry. I just think more characters that the audience liked, because all of the characters that died were kind of characters that the audience didn't really care about. You know, people like Wilden and Noel. Like, just people that we don't care about, really. So I think more main characters should have died just to show things are at stake and maybe break a couple of hearts in the audience and on the show. Because then it pulls you in a lot more, because you kind of expect the unexpected, and literally anything can happen at any point and anybody is in danger. Obviously it's quite unrealistic if like most of the town dies, so I'm not saying kill off every cast member, but I just think one or two like main ones, you know, because like when I thought Mona had died, when I tell you I was sobbing, crying, throwing up, like it was not a good time. And then just for her to come back, it's quite underwhelming. Like, I think they need the guts to just kill off a main character. Jessica DiLaurentis is actually quite underrated. Now hear me out. Jessica DiLaurentis is a horrible person, right? Dislike her a lot. But I think the character is quite underwhelming, because Jessica DiLaurentis was a character that, like, I was actually afraid of her. Like, she was quite mysterious, and because she was nice to the liars' faces, but then did some things behind the scenes, it just added more mystery to this character. Because with Jessica, you know, we are told, you know, we are shown this really, really nice, loving mother. But then through people like Peter Hastings and Veronica and stuff, we're told that Jessica is actually not a good human being and she's done some things. So as the audience, we were kind of there like, oh, interesting. And I think Jessica is a very dimensional character. She has so many layers to her, and ultimately without Jessica DiLaurentis there is no Pretty Little Liars, because everything kind of revolves around her. I think her death was very good in terms of adding mystery to the show, because she obviously died at a time where Alison had come back, and then A obviously acted like they had killed her, so it added, I think that was the time, going back to my previous point, where I felt like things were at stake here. When Jessica died, I was like, oh, okay, like it's serious. And I think because we find out everything about Jessica through reveals, and Cece reveal, Alex reveal, Mary Drake, whatever, I think it just adds a lot more mystery to her. She's kind of like early Alison in terms of like, she's such a mysterious and interesting character. So I think she's just really underrated in terms of the actual character. Not human being, terrible human being. But if we look at the character, I think she's really, really underrated. So I think they made Mona a bit too smart. Now, I know Mona is supposed to be clever because obviously she's A and she has to be one step ahead. But I think through the show, because she was so smart, it kind of made the liars look dumber than what they were. Mona was always there to help them out when they needed it. Mona was kind of like, if there was an issue, you'd go to Mona. Do you know what I mean? But I think it made the liars seem quite dumb, because Mona could figure out basically everything, apart from who is actually A and Redcoat and stuff. So then when the liars had a plan, and she would shut them down, it's kind of like, oh, the liars, like they're just actually dumb. When I don't think they're actually that dumb, but I think they made her just a bit too smart, because like she could just like girl boss her way through anything, and I love that for Mona, but sometimes we need her to take a step back and let the liars do their thing. My final ones are going to talk about two people who I actually quite liked on the show. I quite liked Mary Drake. Kind of like Jessica, Mary Drake was a very dimensional character to me. And Mary Drake obviously had ties in with Jessica. And because I found Jessica really interesting, I kind of found Mary interesting. And although Mary did some terrible things, I think her story is quite understanding, and she's just a mother who wanted to love her kids, and that was taken away from her, and she wanted to protect her kids. She wanted to protect Alex, and she wanted to protect Spencer and Cece, and I think a lot got taken away from her that doesn't really get talked about. So I think she has a lot of trauma there. But also when she takes the rap for Spencer and the girls in season 7, I think that's a really good, it was a really nice thing of her to do. But also, I don't really like season 7 and season 6B, but the season 7 episode 10 where Spencer gets shot and Mary Drake reveals her to be her mum is one of the best episodes and one of the best reveals on the show, and I really, really liked it, because it, for me, it kind of came from nothing, but in a good way. I did not expect when Spencer was lying on the floor bleeding out that Mary Drake was just suddenly going to be like, oh, by the way, I'm your mum. You know? I just think that was one of the, not the best reveals, but in a show full of reveals that were quite underwhelming, I think that was a really, really good reveal. And a reveal that made us gasp, but not in a way that's done purely just from fan service and purely just to dramatize the show. In a way that actually made sense, and in a way that was like, oh, damn, like this whole time, Veronica's not been her mom, and is Melissa even her sister and her dad and whatever. So I think that was really, really good. Another character I also didn't mind was Lucas. I think Lucas as well was quite misunderstood, and I think he's a character that has a lot of feelings that just got portrayed in a different way, and he never really got to properly explain his feelings towards stuff. And I think joining the A team was never his kind of intention, and he never really wanted to. Mona was blackmailing him in the first A team, and I quite like Lucas, and I think he was a really good friend to Hannah, and I think he was just someone that Hannah needed at certain times in her life when Mona wasn't there, and kind of earlier on in the season when Hannah's still discovering a lot of things about herself. I think Lucas was a good person to have on hand, but also when he came back after the time jump, I don't know, he was okay. Quite suspicious at times for like no reason. And sometimes he was just there, and it was quite annoying because it was like, okay, like you're just here and there and mysterious, and we're supposed to think you're a suspect, and then you're just like nothing like important in the story in terms to do with A. But yeah, I don't think he was that bad. Obviously not perfect, no one is, but yeah. So that is it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below any opinions on my unpopular opinions, and if you have any of yourself, make sure to check out part 1 if you haven't watched that already. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.